Good evening, everyone. Trying to set my phone back up. There we go. Now maybe it'll stay. Hello. Hey, Lily. Thank you. I'm going to wait a couple minutes and let others come in. I know sometimes it lags, so I'm already live on Facebook. It is AA Day. AA. I missed Tuesday because Mr. Ryder over here had complications that I needed to take care of, and so Tuesday was a very long day. Took the husband to work and went to the vet in Estacada and all the way back home, give him his meds, and then went and picked the husband up from work and came home and ate dinner and went to bed. It was a long day. Just a minute. Sorry, guys. My sister texts. She's in the chat over here, but she texted me. Anyways, so it is a evening to everyone. My phone goes off and it falls down. Anyways, I'm Sandra and I'm an alcoholic. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So please be mindful in the comments, in the chat. Don't harass others. Just because they're there doesn't mean that they are the alcoholic who suffers. They might be here to learn how to help a friend or family member. So, just so you know. And it's a judgment-free zone. I get my 12 Steps and 12 Traditions out of the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book. I put in the YouTube chat the link that you can come up on panel if you'd like to, or if you just want to have anyway, yeah. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a certain and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrong. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defective characters. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admit it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So I put in the description what we are reading, the page, the story, the book. It's all there. However, I am in the 4th edition. So if you're in a different edition, you're probably on a different page. So we're on A Vision of Recovery on page 494. A vision of recovery. A feeble prayer forged a lasting connection with a higher power for this Micmac Indian. Micmac? I thought I was different because I'm an Indian. I heard that statement from many natives at my early AA meetings. I would only shrug and say to myself, "You think you're different, what about me? I'm a red-headed Indian." I grew up on a reservation in Canada. As a young fellow, I was proud Micmac Indian. My family had a reputation. They were hard drinkers, violent and tough, and I was proud of this. I was told that my grandfather had been the chief of our band, but he had to step down because he went to jail for shooting a man. Jail was almost a badge of honor in my family, or so it seemed to me. As a small boy, I remember standing on top of a case of beer. There were always lots around the house, saying to myself, in a few years, I will be this tall. There were times, though, when I witnessed my father's rages and I was full of fear. I swore that I would not be like him, but I didn't see that alcohol and the rages were related. I always thought I was different. On many occasions, I wished I had black hair like my friends. Micmac was the language in our home, but I would not speak it. All my family spoke Micmac, but when they spoke to me, I would answer in English. I believe I couldn't speak Micmac as well as my parents, so I resolved not to speak it at all. I was 10 years old when I had my first drink of alcohol. On New Year's Eve, I stole 2 glasses of vodka from my parents. I couldn't say that it did what it was supposed to do, for I got deathly sick, threw up, and had diarrhea. The next day, I was full of fear that my parents would find out. I learned my lesson for a while. A few years later, in junior high school, a few friends and I got a bottle of rum from a bootlegger. I got really drunk and it was great. I remember having a feeling of complete freedom. I drank for the next 15 years. Drinking became a major part of my life, and I thought it was normal. Then came the violence, the fighting, the illegal acts, and the image of the tough guy. My family was proud of me, and some relatives would actually encourage me. I spent a number of years in and out of juvenile correction facilities, and after my 18th birthday, I began spending time in county jail. I actually got a high when I came home, knowing that my friends and relatives would respect me more because I had been in jail and was becoming a man. While in a juvenile detention center about 500 miles from my home, I received word that my mother was dying of cancer. I was able to get a pass and return home to spend time with her. One evening, my family asked me if I would stay home with my mother and give her the medicine she was required to take. I'd already had a few drinks and was anxious to get out and party with my friends, but I reluctantly agreed to stay. Self pity set in, and all I could think of was the good time I could have been having. I got very impatient with my mother, and when she refused to take her medicine, I almost forced it into her mouth. Then I left to join my friends. The next morning, I woke up in county jail, about 100 miles from home. I had attempted to break and enter and was caught by the police. That very evening, as I sat in jail, my mother died. I was allowed out for the funeral, and I still recall how alone I felt, even when I was with my family. I felt shame and remorse, and for years to come, I believed I was somehow responsible for my mother's death. This incident haunted me for years. Alcohol would take it away for a while, but the remorse always returned. I tried to comfort myself by saying that my lifestyle was a part of my destiny, just like many of my family members. But this did not remove the remorse. I can remember only one good thing that happened during this time. As my mother lay dying, I talked to her in the Mi'kmaq language. She seemed so happy, and she told me that it sounded beautiful to hear me speak Mi'kmaq. I cherish this memory. I was to meet a young girl and have a son. Proud, I named him after myself, and my drinking slowed down for a little while. One day, I promised my son that tomorrow I would take him to the movies. I really meant it from the bottom of my heart, and I was looking forward to it. That night, I took a drink, and it led to many more. The next day, I was hungover, and even though I had promised to go to the movies that afternoon, I took a drink to fix myself up. That drink was followed by many more, and I justified them by telling myself, my son is so young, he will never remember the movie. The day after the promised movie, I was guilty and remorseful and felt I had just I was just no good. I faced my son only to hear him talking excitedly about going to a movie. I couldn't say anything for the movie was no longer playing. I left his mother to explain. The next few years saw me living back in the old home with my father, as my girl had left me, taking my son. My drinking escalated even more, as did the guilt, remorse, and fear. I was hospitalized for dehydration, had a mild stroke, spent a week in a psychiatric ward, and suffered a number of alcoholic seizures. I lost the trust of my family and friends. They simply could not rely on me for anything. I would stop for a while, but I always drank again. I can certainly identify with our co-founder, Bill W., when he says on page 4 of the big book, the old fierce determination to win came back. I would take a drink and then I knew everything was going to be all right. I was going to clean up my act. Everything was going to change. You'll see. It didn't. Nothing changed. I tried so many ways of beating the game. I went to church and took a pledge. I went to a native sweat lodge. I would do something be would I would be put in jail. Vowed to stay away from hard liquor. Nothing worked. Then came the pills to stop the shakes and get off the softs for a while. One evening during a party at my home, an argument led to fighting as usual. One of my brothers stabbed me in the back with a knife, and I fell to the floor unconscious. I came to in the hospital. They told me that one lung had collapsed and they had to drain in my lung that came out the side of my body. The very next day, some friends came to visit, bringing a bottle of liquor. I still had that pride. I was still the tough guy. I lay there in bed with tube draining my lung and smoked cigarettes and drank liquor. Later in AA, I had the nerve to question step 2 and wonder why I had to be restored to sanity. I can honestly say that nothing worked for me until I joined Alcoholics Anonymous. Eventually, I ended up in a treatment center, and after a 28-day program, I began attending AA meetings on a regular basis. The treatment center introduced me to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I left there knowing that the only hope for me was 12 steps. I was told that AA is a spiritual program and that I had better have a higher power. I knew nothing of God or higher powers, and I began trying to find one. At first, I thought that since I was a native, maybe I should practice the native traditional ways. Then I thought maybe I should go to church on the reservation. Then I believed that if I went to enough AA meetings or just sat there, I would have a vision and achieve recovery. One day, a member asked me if I believed that there actually was a higher power. I did believe there was a God of some sort or another. He told me that was enough. He said, with that belief and attending meetings, I would find a higher power of my own understanding. Today, I am thankful for that advice. After 3 months in AA, I returned home one evening after a meeting to hear the music and laughter of a party next door. Some of my drinking buddies were at that party, and I just knew I was going to end up there. I did not want to drink, yet the party was like a magnet. I was full of fear as I ran across the street to a pay telephone. I called my sponsor, but there was no answer. Panic set in as I ran home. In the house, I went into my bedroom and sat on the side of the bed. I looked up and said these words, "Well, buddy, I guess there's just you and me." Believe it or not, it worked. A little peace came over me. Anxiety left, and then I lay down and fell asleep. I slept well that night, the first good sleep in a long time. That feeble request to God worked. I was honest and really wanted God's help. From that day on, I knew that I had found a higher power and that He would help me. Over the next few months, my life slowly began to change as I worked on step 1 of recovery program. I listened to speakers and began a big book study with an older member. In Micmac folklore, there are little people we call Beluides. I don't know how to pronounce that. They live in the mountains, but they often sneak into our homes to play tricks on us, usually at night, so we won't see them. When I noticed that chapter 4 of the Big Book was agnostic, he appeared or had appeared to change. Now I've got to figure out where I was. I told AA members that the Belugidas were fooling around with my big book. You know what? They are still at it today. I now understand that spiritual malady should be my main concern, and that the more faith I have, the fewer problems I will have. Today I have more faith than I I've ever had. And as my faith grows, my fears lessen. For a guy who has spent years in jails, hospitals, psychiatric wards, a guy who just could not stop drinking, there was only one answer: Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps. I was very fortunate that I was steered in the right direction. A dramatic change has taken place in my life. Soon I hope to celebrate my second anniversary of continuous sobriety. In 2 years, my whole life has changed. Today, I sponsor others. I understand the word compassion, and I feel it. I am working on step 8 at the present time, and I just know that more happiness is to come into my life as I trudge the road of happy destiny. Let me see how long the next one is. Yeah, the next one's pretty long. I can read a couple pages of it. Okay. Gutter bravado. Alone and unemployable, he was given 2 options by the court: get help or go to jail, and his journey toward teachability began. I was born in a major Midwestern city at the tail end of the baby boom. My parents were not well-to-do, but they were employed and pursuing the American dream in the mid-1950s. Dad was an ex-policeman who had put himself through law school and worked with banks and as a real estate broker. Mama graduated from a well-known East Coast college, majoring in journalism, and moved west to marry my father and raise a family. Both were children of hard-working European immigrants. Growing up, my big brother and I went to church on Sundays and attended parochial schools. We had plenty to eat and more than just the basic necessities of life. I was a smart but mischievous kid, and at some point I decided it was easier to lie than to suffer the consequences of my pranks. Dad was big on law and order, but especially didn't like liars. We often had conflicts. Other than this, my early childhood was a relatively happy one. Eventually, my brother went off to college, and I started venturing into the world of my own. I enjoyed my friends and our many adventures. This is where my first experiment with alcohol began. Sharing a few beers or a stolen bottle with friends on Friday nights was my approach to maturity and adulthood. In school, I developed a reputation of never quite working up to my potential. I felt the world took things much too seriously, where I saw myself as fun, loving, and happy-go-lucky. Others saw irresponsibility and insolence. A rebellious nature soon started to surface. My racket around here today. In the mid-60s, I had the opportunity to visit my brother, who had a fellowship at a university in California. These were heady times, and my experiences there left a lasting impression on me. There was music in the air and dancing in the streets. A little wonder that after returning to the Midwest, I soon became a disciplined problem, disillusioned with what I saw as the mundane trivialities of school. I found it harder and harder to concentrate. I longed for the carefree life. By the fall of 1968, after leaving 3 different schools, I decided I'd had enough. So I quit the books, packed my guitar, left home and headed back to the West Coast, filled with the optimism of youth and intending to make a life for myself. My tiny grub stack soon started to run out, and work was hard to find. I panhandled a little, but found I was too proud for it, or more likely, not hungry enough. I began living hand to mouth, but my survival skills were not as sharp as I thought. In warmer weather, I camped in the woods near the coastal highway. The barking of the sea lions made it hard to sleep. With winter approaching, I roamed the waterfront and the streets, sleeping in storerooms and seedy hotels, or flocked with migrant farm workers in town for their off season. I think I'm going to stop there. I'm live. I'm live. A feeble prayer forged a lasting connection with the higher power for this Micmac. That's that's what I call the aha is when you finally realize that there is something greater than yourself that can help you out of this alcoholic state that you want to stay in, but you're telling yourself no, you need to, get out of that. It's hard. But like me, when I started AA, I didn't hear nothing. My first meeting, my ears were closed. I was like, nope, not happening. And then I actually started listening. I started wearing my hearing aid to meetings so I could hear what most everybody was saying. And it started making sense because I had those same things happen. I'd gone through those same things as the people in that room. And you wouldn't know that there's others who were achieving to be sober unless if you go to a meeting. Those people in those rooms help any way they can to help the next alcoholic to achieve their sobriety. My sister just texted me again. Yes, Lil. The earlier, the better. My car is going to the shop tomorrow, so just trying to figure that out. Sorry, guys. Willard says he's on his way. Anyway, so like in the front of the book, it's all the stories are telling us that we don't discriminate on your sex, gender, race. None of that matters. All that matters is that you're there for the right reason, and that's to get help to achieve your sobriety. And that's the whole point of AA. It's not there to tell you what to do or how to do it. It's there to help you do it and help you through it. And like him, I got a sponsor before I ever even went to my second meeting. I had a sponsor. I didn't know I needed one. I just decided when I found out that she was willing to answer her phone for me, a total stranger calling her, she answered her phone. And she's been my sponsor ever since. And I'll be 12 years in November. I also felt like he did about comforting myself, because that becoming the alcoholic was part of my destiny. Because you've heard me say that as a teenager all the way up, even through my 20s, I always fought becoming the alcoholic. I fought it every day. And then I became that alcoholic. But see, my father was an alcoholic. My dad drinks, not very often, but he does have a drink every now and then. I can't do that because one drink obviously is not enough for me. And fighting the battle of not becoming something that I was going to eventually probably become, I did that. For a long time, I did that. Then I hit 30, and it was into my 30s. And I just gave into it. About 30 years to not become that alcoholic, just to give in and become that alcoholic. And then he says, the next few years saw me living back in the old home with my father as my girl had left me, taking my son. My drinking escalated even more and as did the guilt, remorse, and fear. I wasn't hospitalized per se. I did go to the hospital, and that was the first time that I got sober without AA. And if I had found AA back then, I may not have gone out again at that after that year. But I can't say for sure because I didn't. I drank after a year, and it took me another couple years to come back from that. And going to AA taught me that I don't have to take that drink. I can turn that drink off. Just turn it, say no. And also, like him, he says, over the next few months of life, slowly began to change as I worked on step 1 of our recovery program. He barked. I got it on camera. He barked. He don't bark very often. But so when I started doing my steps is when I started to understand what the program was about. And my sponsor was right there with me to explain ways to work that step and how to, come to terms with that step that I was on. And he also said, when I noticed that chapter 4 of the big book was agnostic, had appeared to change, I told AA members that the Bulgarians were fooling around with my book. You know what? They are still at it today. Yep. And then Gutter Bravado, alone and unemployable. He was given 2 options by the court: get help or go to jail. I never was threatened to go to jail or anything, but I probably, maybe I should have. Maybe I would have changed sooner. I don't know. But I'm glad I didn't go to jail because it's scary there. I highlighted, I panhandled a little, but found I was too proud for it. Or more likely, not hungry enough. I began living hand to mouth, but my survival skills were not as sharp as I thought. I have survival skills, but I panhandled just to get a beer. I panhandled the neighbors to give me beer. any way I could get it, other than sell my soul. But sobriety is achievable. You just have to want it for the right reason, and the right reason is you and you alone. I mean, I know, you know it's about time for me to end the live stream. And you barked at Willard again. You barked at him.
He's only barked at you and the maintenance guy. And that's it.
Yeah, he's barked at Willard and the maintenance guy.
Did you hear him this time?
We do this stare down. Ryder. You lose, I win. Mama wins. Mama wins.
Car's going in the shop.
All right. Anyways, that's going to be the meeting today. Just remember, if you are struggling with alcohol addiction, you're not alone, and please find a meeting. Meetings are absolutely everywhere, and you are welcome with open arms. But yeah. So, love you guys. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. It's all right. Watch the replay. Love you, Tony. Hope you feel better soon.